The story begins in Shinjuku City, where a girl named Izumo has just finished reading her favorite book. She wishes her life could have been more romantic like in her story, but she prepares to end her own life. However, a man named Andy suddenly warns her that she's standing in a dangerous spot. She tells him to stay away, claiming he'll get an incurable disease if he touches her, but he approaches her anyway, allowing himself to get stabbed. This causes her to panic as he grabs onto her, telling her that he has never heard of a deadly disease transmitted by touch. Izumo reveals that she has the ability to give bad luck to anyone she touches, as Andy suddenly falls, and he gets run over by a train. She blames herself for the incident, thinking she just got him killed, but his head suddenly flies to her, and his body quickly regenerates as she watches on in disbelief. Andy thinks that he's lucky to meet her, but she runs away. But he grabs onto her, revealing that he is undead. He is about to inquire about her ability, but he notices that the police are on their way, so he flies away, using his blood to fly around the city, and he takes her to the top of a building. Izumo tries to escape, but Andy stops her, saying she can't leave until she answers his questions. She warns him that he will trigger her ability, but he knows that this won't happen because he's only touching her clothes. She implores him to let her go, but she notices that it's a long way down. He wants her to answer his questions, but she refuses, saying she'd rather die, so he threatens to throw her off the building, scaring her into submission. Izumo reveals that it started 10 years ago when her parents were about to leave for a business trip. They gave her a hug before they entered the plane, but before they could take off, the plane suddenly exploded, killing everyone inside. After the incident, she discovered her ability, blaming herself for the death of her parents, and she is covering her body with clothing to keep others safe. But Andy suddenly hugs her, saying he wants to test her ability. A crate falls from a plane, and it crushes his body, as Izumo tries to run away, but she loses her footing, causing her to fall off the building. This causes her to panic, revealing that she isn't ready to die, so she starts crying, but Andy catches up to her, and saves her from certain death. He tells her that he won't let her die, because she might be able to give him a real death, thinking she is hiding something about her ability, which could be the key to finally ending his life. They fly back to his hideout, where Andy tells Izumo to remove her clothes, wanting to learn more about her ability, but she starts running away, because she doesn't want him to see her naked. She gets caught on a nail, and loses her hat, revealing her ridiculously long hair. She reveals that no one has ever cut her hair, because she knows that the hairstylist would end up dead. But Andy holds onto her, and he starts cutting her hair, revealing that he used to work as a stylist. He knows that her ability won't be triggered until he lets go of her, but he tells her not to worry, reminding her that he's undead. He shows her the end result, and she's actually happy to see this. Andy is excited to see what's going to happen, knowing he has held onto her for 15 minutes. His head is suddenly sliced off, as a group of men appear, thanking Izumo for helping them capture Andy. They put his head in a capsule, and they put handcuffs on her, telling her that their job is to control negators like her, but she has no idea what they're talking about. Their leader reveals that they know about her ability, so they are using clothes to protect themselves. He reveals that they are going to exploit her ability, saying Andy was planning to do the same, but she rejects the idea, telling him that Andy is nothing like them. He warns her to watch her tongue, threatening to kill her if she doesn't cooperate, and she starts to blame herself for Andy's fate, but she thanks him for cutting her hair. At that moment, one of the men is struck by lightning, so they start to wonder if this is because of Izumo's ability, but they conclude that it isn't, because she never touched the man. However, Izumo tells them that they're wrong, and Andy suddenly breaks free. The men prepare to cut him down, as their leader tells them that Andy is a weak fighter, but Andy claims that he used to be good at fighting. He reveals that his brain can't handle storing over 100 years worth of his memories, so he put a cork on his brain to block it out. He unlocks his memories, allowing him to regain his fighting skills, which he uses to defeat the enemies. Andy concludes that the appearance of the enemies was purely by chance, and the lightning bolt is the result of Izumo's ability. He returns the cork, and the leader threatens to kill Izumo if Andy doesn't hand over his head. So he slices off his head, and throws it to the leader. But Izumo breaks free, and she kisses Andy, revealing that they are about to experience the ultimate bad luck. The leader isn't bothered, but Andy is excited, telling her to run away, as he keeps the leader busy. Izumo gets out of the building as a meteor falls, causing a massive explosion that blows her away. Izumo thinks that Andy is dead, but he emerges from the rubble, and she is overjoyed to see that he survived. But after some time, Andy tells her to mate with him, thinking it will trigger an even greater bad luck. Izumo doesn't want to do it, telling him about the time she kissed her grandfather, who she didn't really like, and he just ended up with a sprained ankle. So she concludes that the more she likes the person, the greater the effect becomes. She explains that if Andy forces himself on her, she's going to hate him, and she won't be able to give him the death that he desires. So he changes his plan, telling her that he won't let her die until she falls in love with him. They visit an armory, where Andy fits Izumo with heavy armor, telling her that it should protect her from their enemies. He reveals that an organization is after them, and he's expecting a second group to show up. He explains that he and Izumo are called negators because they negate the rules of the world, saying the enemy organization also has negators. The enemy already knows about their abilities, so he thinks that they don't stand a chance, suggesting that they run away. They try to get away on a bike, but Andy reveals that he has no destination in mind. Izumo thinks they're going to get caught, but he assures her that he won't let her die until she falls in love with him, so that she can give him the biggest stroke of bad luck. She thinks that she'll never fall in love with him, saying she doesn't even like him. At that moment, a crack appears in the sky, and Andy recognizes it as a warp gate. The sky shatters, as the enemy, Void, charges at them, blowing Izumo away. She sees that Andy has been crushed, so she runs to him, but she realizes that she's running backwards, and she bumps into a man named Shen, as she notes that she can't move her legs. Shen tells Void that he caught her, but Void tells him to kill her, revealing that their mission is to eliminate Izumo and capture Andy. However, Shen doesn't want to do it, and he starts asking her personal questions. Andy swiftly recovers, and he is about to attack Void, but he suddenly stops moving. Void punches him away, but Andy realizes he can move again. He thinks Void must have the ability to stop his movements, but Izumo speculates that it was Shen who stopped him. But he disagrees, saying Void paralyzed his body, while Shen is manipulating her will. Void hits him, and he immediately counters, as he realizes that he can move immediately after he gets hit. They proceed to exchange blows, as Izumo wonders if the organization will chase them forever. Shen reveals that they've become a high-priority target because of the meteor that fell on the building, so there will be plenty of negators going after them. Izumo learns that Shen and Void are also negators, so she wonders why they aren't being hunted. Shen explains that there is a group called the Union, and there are 10 negators within its ranks, who are exempted from pursuit, under the condition that they carry out missions. Izumo thinks about joining the Union, but Void tells her that all the seats are taken, and he is about to attack her, but Andy saves her, saying it will be a great idea to join the Union. He suggests eliminating 2 negators, so that they can take the spots, assuring her that he will keep her safe. She touches him, and she quickly runs away, telling him that he is about to have massive bad luck, but it's not because she loves him, saying she's only grateful for everything that he has done for her. A truck crashes into Andy, and it explodes, but Shen and Void are able to escape unscathed. Andy flies away, as he thinks about the abilities that the enemies have. He remembers how Void stopped him from moving whenever he was ready to attack, so Andy concludes that Void's ability is to make his attacks unavoidable. But Shen's ability is still a mystery, so Andy needs to be careful until he figures it out. However, he realizes that there are bombs in the area, and they explode, causing the building to collapse. Izumo wonders if this is because of her ability, or if it happened purely by chance. Void survives the explosion because of his suit, and he sees Andy's arms sticking out of the rubble, so he grabs onto it, thinking he has finally caught the target. But Andy suddenly appears, revealing that his body parts disappear 30 seconds after they have been cut off. He bites his finger and points it at Void, who tries to freeze him, but Andy launches his finger, which hits Void's head and defeats him in an instant. Andy explains that Void can only immobilize his muscles, but he can launch his body parts using his regenerative powers, so he didn't need to move a muscle to land the finishing blow. Shen realizes that Void has been defeated, and Andy tries to attack him, but he easily parries the attacks. Andy tries to guess what kind of ability he has, thinking it has something to do with parrying. Izumo gives him the sword, and he prepares to cut him down, but he suddenly stops moving, as Shen tells him that he hesitated for a moment. Shin wonders if Andy has a soft spot for Izumo, who tries to touch him, but she completely misses. He refuses to reveal his ability, but he tells them that they won't be able to run away or touch him, because his ability affects their minds. He wonders who will be joining the union to replace Void, so Andy tells him to give the spot to Izumo, telling her not to worry, because he will be able to survive, and make her fall in love with him before she dies. Shin is about to take her away, but she tells him to look away, because she's about to make love to Andy. She thinks that he deserves a reward, because he fought for her with everything he had, telling him that this is his chance to die. But Shin suddenly starts laughing, admitting that he has taken a liking to them, so he wants them to take out another union member, offering to help them join when there are 2 spots. He reveals that a union member will be going to a lake in Russia, advising them to look for a man with an emblem and a red necktie. He hopes that they will succeed, saying there will be people hunting them along the way, and he decides to leave them alone. Izumo is surprised that they have been spared, and Andy helps her get dressed, telling her that he doesn't want her when she's desperate. He tells her about his plan, revealing that he has a boat which they can use to reach Russia, where they will then take a plane to a place called Irkutsk, so they can meet his allies, who will help them defeat the Negator, and secure another vacant spot in the Union, so that they can finally live in peace. 50 years earlier, we see Andy trapped in an isolation facility, as a young girl watches him. Back in the present, we see the girl on a satellite, as she tracks Andy's boat. We see Andy enjoying the ride, but Izumo hides, worried they are going to be hunted. Andy drags her out, telling her to enjoy it, but they suddenly come under attack. Izumo thinks they're in trouble, but Andy tells her they can always use her ability to get away. Izumo thinks her ability isn't that convenient, but Andy says it's all about how she uses it, showing off how he can use his ability for more than just staying alive. Izumo is impressed, and wonders if they can join the Union now, but Andy tells her they need to go after the person with the emblem, thinking it must represent the 10 members. He notes that he's aware of 3 other people that would have an emblem. The first is the maker of his indestructible sword that he stole. The second is a scientist who experimented on him 50 years ago, and the third is a girl named Jean who can create invisible barriers, and she was the one who captured him all those years ago. We learn that the girl has a thing for Andy, calling him the only man she has ever loved. She launches a blast from her satellite, and it instantly destroys their ship. Andy wonders what they were attacked by, and he sees Izumo unconscious. He finds she is trapped under the wreckage, but he cuts his arm off and uses his regeneration to push the wreckage away. As he swims up, he notices something that gives him an idea. They make it back to the surface, and Izumo regains consciousness. Andy tells her to put her hands up, as the enemy tells them to surrender. Izumo is surprised they are surrendering, but Andy says he's just buying time to figure out if they can control her ability. Izumo thinks it's impossible, but Andy has a theory. He notes that her previous strokes of bad luck always draw on something of proportional value. In the cases of the haircut and their kiss, they meant a lot to her, and when there was nothing nearby of proportional value, her ability pulled lightning and a meteor. He notes that there's something of proportional value underwater that they can use, and Izumo notices that her bra is out of place. Andy says he had to move it to give her CPR, and Izumo realizes he saw her naked. He also says that she wasn't waking up, so he even gave her mouth to mouth. Izumo can't believe this, and there is suddenly a huge explosion that shoots them up, allowing them to get onto the jet. Andy cuts through the pilot in an instant, and they end up stealing the plane. Andy tells Izumo they can control her ability by finding a source of misfortune, and then by applying a suitable amount of contact, they will be able to trigger it, telling her that her ability is now their trump card. As they continue to fly, the plane suddenly prepares to self-destruct. Andy quickly ejects, and the plane explodes. Izumo thinks they are going to fall, but Andy softens the landing with his body. They manage to arrive in Irkutsk, and Izumo is amazed to see such a beautiful lake. Andy tells her to check it out, while he goes to find his friends, saying the Union won't make a move on her while there are so many tourists around. Izumo thinks about how much has changed in just 4 days after meeting Andy. She gets approached by some other people, but she doesn't understand them, so she just runs away. She stops as she notices a girl painting, and it turns out to be Jean. Jean is excited to meet another Japanese person, and she even gets Izumo to paint with her. Jean asks Izumo if she likes things that change or things that stay the same. Izumo isn't sure, and Jean reveals she prefers things that stay the same, like art, which allows her to capture the world as a never-changing drawing. Izumo ends up finishing her painting, and Jean is surprised to see stars, because there should be nothing in space besides the sun and the moon, but Izumo thought the moon looked lonely, so she gave it some friends. She thinks about Jean's question from earlier, revealing that she used to feel like she could never change, but after meeting Andy and going through so much with him, she appreciates things that can change. But Jean calls her naive, putting on her tie as she suddenly starts floating up into the sky. Andy returns, and he instantly tries to attack Jean, but he is just pushed away. Izumo is shocked realizing who she really is, and Jean prepares to play with them, knowing that they are after her. Jean suddenly rushes to Andy, revealing that she missed him, and he tries to slice her, but a barrier protects her. Izumo wonders if she is the one who captured Andy 50 years ago, because she looks like a teenager. Andy reveals that she was 16 when she caught him, so he knows that she is now 66 years old, thinking the organization has an anti-aging technology. But she shuts him up, claiming she is stuck at 16 years old. He jumps back, realizing that something invisible was covering his mouth, so he needs to find a way to deal with her ability. She reveals that she is in love with Andy, saying she was ordered to capture him 50 years ago, but after she caught him, she realized that all of their seats were filled, so he had to stay in a cell. In a flashback, we see Andy in his cell, as Jean apologizes to him, but he tells her that it's okay, because he can't die anyways, and he wants to have a rematch, saying he won't lose again. Back in the present, Jean reveals that Andy's cool demeanor made her fall in love with him. He throws bombs at her, causing a large explosion, but she emerges unscathed. She is happy that Void is dead, saying they now have a vacant spot in the Union, telling him he should take it. He throws a flashbang, and while she is blinded, he charges at her, trying to get past her barrier. But she counters, forcing him to retreat, as he reveals that he is still trying to figure out her ability. Izumo wonders where his friends are, but he tells her that they're already dead, so they will have to deal with Jean on their own. He recalls how she controlled the water in the lake and created an invisible barrier, thinking her ability has something to do with hardening, but he wonders why his sword can't slice through her barrier. She gathers wind energy, and she throws her weapon at Andy, slicing his body in half. She knows that he could have dodged it, but he wanted to protect Izumo, thinking she is a burden to him. Jean reveals that she has restrained the lower half of his body, telling him to give up on Izumo, but he refuses to let her die. So Jean prepares to take his head, but he reveals that he has already figured out her ability. He bites a grenade and slices off his head, launching it to the sky. He explodes in midair, causing his blood to rain on Jean and revealing the hands surrounding her, which were formed by fixing the air in place. He sees this as proof that his theory is correct, revealing that her ability is to prevent things from changing. Andy knows that he can't defeat her on his own, so he tells Izumo to help him out. She touches him with her chest, so Jean becomes upset, thinking she has seduced him with her body. Jean says that Izumo's beauty will fade after 20 years, but her ability prevents her appearance from changing, allowing her to keep her youthful appearance. However, Andy thinks that this is unusual, because she is an external targeter, explaining that there are two types of negators. The self-targeters can only use their abilities on themselves, while the external targeters can only use their abilities on others. Jean claims that she is a self-targeter, saying her appearance should serve as evidence, but Andy notices that she is aging, and she is just covering her face with makeup to give her a youthful appearance. He concludes that she is an external targeter, thinking her ability doesn't work on humans. This makes her upset, and she tries to attack him, but he starts flying away, as Izumo wonders why Jean is just walking to them, thinking running would be more efficient. Andy realizes that Jean has a weakness, saying they just need to find a good source of misfortune to take her out. At that moment, something hits them, causing them to crash, as Andy realizes that there is something above them. They are attacked by laser beams, as Jean reveals that they're investigating a mysterious animal in the lake, so she's been running a scan on it, using her ability to help find the creature. But she tells them that she's had enough, saying she will kill Izumo instead of the creature, as a UFO appears above them. She charges at him, trying to kill Izumo, but Andy dashes away, as he explains that he can't let Izumo die until she gives him the death that he desires. He notices blood in the water, so he realizes that there's a hole in the barrier under Jean's feet which allows her to walk. He dashes to her, as he plans to trigger bad luck at the right moment, knowing the hole should be big enough to squeeze his head in. He covers her with blood, obscuring her vision, so she thinks about releasing her barrier. But a sword slides into it, exposing its weak spot as Izumo throws his head inside, triggering his bad luck and allowing him to reach Jean. He explains that since he is inside the barrier, the bad luck will be able to reach him, and the UFO fires a beam of light, destroying everything in its path. Izumo makes her way to Andy, and he is about to kill Jean, but he ultimately decides against it, realizing that she is about to die. Jean reveals that she did terrible things for the Union, hoping that things would change, but nothing happened in the end. She tells Izumo that her painting was beautiful, saying she never thought about making changes, but she now realizes that change isn't a bad thing. The anti-aging is about to wear off, so she tells them to leave, because she doesn't want them to see her face. But Andy hugs her, and he tells her that she is still beautiful, allowing her to enjoy her final moments. Izumo and Andy have a drink, and Izumo cries over her death. Andy thinks about how she always had doubts about killing to stay alive herself, and he thanks Izumo for helping him save her. But Izumo asks to try and change the Union, not wanting anyone else to suffer like she did. Andy agrees to help her, but a warp gate suddenly opens, and the two get picked up. They start to fall, and they realize they are at the Union. Andy immediately attacks with his fingers, calling it a greeting, but his attack is easily stopped. They land in their seats, and Andy tells them all to die, but Shen is happy to see them. Andy gets punched by a member named Tatiana, as she is mad that he killed Jean, but another member, Billy, reminds her that fighting among Union members is forbidden. It seems like she still wants to fight, but the first seat, Jules, tells them to stop, and Andy suddenly puts his sword to Izumo. Tatiana is also forced to attack Billy, and Jules asks them if they still want to continue, so they both agree to behave. They all continue with their meeting, and Jules calls upon a book named Apocalypse. The book opens, and reveals that they have 6 quests. The quests include capturing other negators, and taking out certain creatures known as UMAs, but they also come with rewards, like adding an extra seat to the Union. However, they only have until the end of the month to complete all the quests, or else they will face a punishment. Jules tells another member named Nico to run an analysis, and he determines that they are only able to complete 3 of the quests, so they will need to accept the punishment. Izumo is confused about what's going on, so the boy next to her, Top, explains that Apocalypse is the first artifact that was found on Earth, and it forces them to complete a bunch of unreasonable quests. Izumo wonders why they need to listen to it, remembering how Jean was never able to change anything no matter how hard she tried. Jules explains that rules have been added to Earth 98 times, things like language, race, death, and sickness. If they don't intervene, new penalties will be added once every 3 months, so that's why they must do everything to strengthen their forces, wanting to eventually kill the creator of the Earth who is forcing these rules upon them. Izumo isn't happy about this situation, so Jules tells her she can make change if she becomes number 1, saying that the leader of the Union is determined by who has achieved the most results. Izumo wonders how long that would take, but Andy suddenly grabs Apocalypse, wanting to know which quest is the hardest. It bites off his hands, but tells him it's the one that involves an individual named Spoil. Andy immediately decides to accept it, saying he'll do it with Izumo, but also Shen. The request is accepted, and Shen can't believe he is getting dragged along. On the 21st of the month, we see Izumo getting dressed by Shen's subordinate Mui. She hopes that Izumo can help take care of Shen, revealing that she can't take part in the quest because she doesn't have an emblem. They prepare to head off, but Andy suddenly bumps into her, causing a magma explosion. His clothes are destroyed, but he wants to just get on with their quest. Shen tells him that he needs the outfit, explaining that it's special. The suit is surprisingly durable, and the tie grants access to all public services, as well as the ability to translate any language, and the emblem is necessary to participate in the quest. But Andy still doesn't care, saying they are splitting up, because he wants to have a date with Izumo. There is suddenly an alert, and we see that one of the UMAs in their containment has escaped. The group realizes that it's nearby, and Mui finds that the creature is named Clothes, which has the ability to latch onto a person and transform into the clothes that they most desire. But she notes that it takes control of the person's body. Andy gets punched, but he grabs the man and knocks him out. However, Mui notes that if the host loses the capacity to move, then Clothes will find a new body. Mui gets taken over, but Andy notes that her appearance didn't change, but we see she has gained an emblem. She starts attacking them, and Andy tells Shen to stop her with his power, but he says that it doesn't work on Clothes. Izumo grabs onto her, triggering her ability, and Mui is knocked out by a brick. The Clothes move again, targeting Izumo, but Andy saves her just in time, and it latches onto him instead. Izumo finds it strange that it doesn't seem to be turning into Clothes, and the creature curses at Andy because he's too demanding, wanting clothes that can instantly regenerate and fly to him at will. Andy calls it lame, so the creature tries to consume him, but he is suddenly hit by a laser since he touched Izumo, and Nico apologizes for an artifact malfunction. But we see Andy has tamed the creature, and Izumo names it Clothy. Andy gains points for the capture, and he moves up to the 9th rank. Meanwhile, Nico receives a report about the appearance of a UMA in New York. It's identified as a rotting corpse, so they think it must be Spoil, but Andy just gets excited about grabbing a burger in America. We see Andy and Izumo riding a truck in America, where Izumo reads a document, revealing that a rotting corpse was first spotted in New York City. We learn that their mission is to capture Spoil in the town of Longing, and Shen reveals that there is a legion of zombies. He says that a group of investigators went to the town, and they didn't make it back, but they were able to send a voice message. He plays it, and everyone hears the men as they panic, because they saw their bodies transforming. Zombies appeared, and they tried to defend themselves, but they were ultimately wiped out. Shen warns Andy that he's going to have a hard time against Spoil, saying he will have to go all out, but he isn't bothered at all. That evening, Shen approaches Izumo, telling her that he and Andy will deal with Spoil, but she reveals that she wants to help, mentioning the reward Apocalypse mentioned, which is the location of the negator called Unrepair. She explains that she wants to meet him, thinking he might be able to give Andy the death that he desires. She thinks that Andy forced Shen to join them, but he reveals that there's another reason, saying the quest is difficult, so he might be able to see another side of Andy. The next day, they arrive at their destination, and we see that it's surrounded by a wall. Andy pulls out a rocket launcher, using it to destroy the wall, and a horde of zombies appear. Andy wonders if they can be saved, but Shen tells him it's impossible, because their bodies have already been altered. He decides not to hold back, telling everyone to buckle up, as he drives forward, using the truck to run over the zombies, and ramming it into the wall. He jumps out, telling the zombies to duck if they can understand him, because he wants to talk to them. He proceeds to butcher the zombies, cutting off their heads, but he realizes that one of them was able to understand him, so he concludes that she isn't like the others. He plans to use her to look for Spoil, but Shen tells him that he's being reckless, revealing that UMAs are different from negators, because they are the rules themselves. Shen explains that negators need to meet certain conditions to activate their skills, but UMAs can impose their rule on anyone who steps within their range. Clothy tells Andy that there's something written on his stomach, and he realizes that there's a timer. Shen and Izumo don't see it on their bodies, so Shen thinks Andy must have entered Spoil's range, causing Izumo to become worried. But Andy maintains his composure, and he decides to wait until he spoils, thinking it won't be enough to kill him. As the timer expires, he begins to rot, but his body fights it, and he ends up turning into a half-zombie. The girl talks to him, and he can now understand what she's saying, so he tells his companions that he's going to marry her, saying she will reveal Spoil's location after their marriage. As he walks away, Izumo sees a boy, who hides after seeing her, but she chases after him. She enters an underground tunnel, thinking about saving the boy, but Shen forces her to retreat, telling her that she's being reckless. He tells her not to proceed further, because she may enter Spoil's range, thinking the boy is going to become a zombie. A group of children appear, revealing that they have timers on them, but Shen wonders why their timers have more digits. Their leader thinks that Shen and Izumo are there to kill them, because they're about to turn into zombies, but Izumo rushes to him, causing a timer to appear on her body, and Shen realizes that he can't abandon her, so he decides to join her. Meanwhile, we see the zombie girl dressed up for the wedding, and Andy tells her that she looks great. She thanks him for making her dream come true, saying she always wanted to wear a wedding dress. She implores him to put the zombies out of their misery, and she points him to a statue, telling him to kill it. He recalls that his order is to capture Spoil, but he wants to fulfill the girl's wish, so he attacks the statue, causing it to transform as Spoil awakens, destroying the chapel. Andy emerges from the rubble, and we see that the zombies tried to protect him. He launches his fists, hitting the bell, and he tells the zombies to attack Spoil, advising them to follow the sound of the bell, so a swarm of zombies rush to the location. We return to Izumo, as the leader introduces himself as Ken, revealing that he is the oldest in the group, so he's responsible for keeping everyone safe. Izumo tells him that they are there to help, and she inquires about what happened. In a flashback, a dark ball appears in the middle of the town, and it starts talking to the people, telling them that they are easy to spoil. It unleashes its powers, causing everyone to turn into zombies, but Ken's teacher helps the children escape, taking them to the underground tunnel. She tells them not to worry about her, claiming she isn't going to die until she gets married, and she advises them to focus on their dreams, because it's going to prevent them from spoiling. Back in the present, a girl cries, and Ken approaches her, seeing that her timer is about to expire. He reminds her about her dream to become a florist, causing her to feel better, and the number on her timer suddenly goes up. He tells Izumo that this is how they raise the numbers, asking her if she's going to help them. At that moment, they hear a commotion, as Shen realizes that there is something happening above them. They decide to check it out, and they see Andy fighting Spoil, as the zombies try to help him. Izumo is surprised to see this, but Shen knows that the zombies are no match for Spoil, saying Andy is just being kind to them, by giving them a chance to fight to the death. He sees Shen, telling him to hold onto his bride, and the kids recognize her as their teacher. They are happy to see her, and a zombie touches Izumo, as he charges at Spoil. A signage falls, slicing him in half, and Andy sees this, realizing that the zombies don't stand a chance, so he comes up with a plan. He orders the zombies to touch Izumo, saying she will turn them into bombs, as he explains that it's the only way to win. Izumo is against the idea, but the teacher hugs her, and she realizes that the zombies can't be saved, so they are ready to die in the fight. She decides to go with the plan, and the teacher charges at Spoil, as Ken tries to save her, but Shen uses his ability, forcing the boy to stop. She approaches Spoil, and she ends up getting crushed, but it suddenly loses its footing, and it crashes into a building filled with gunpowder, resulting in an explosion. But Shen knows that it isn't strong enough, and Spoil gets back up, as Andy tells the zombies to keep up the pressure, so they charge in, as Izumo touches all of them, turning them into bombs. They cling to Spoil as they detonate, covering the area with explosions. But it inhales the zombies, swallowing all of them, and a mysterious energy surrounds it, as it transforms into its second form. It's about to attack Andy with an energy beam, but Shen uses his ability, causing it to miss, and it ends up hitting the Statue of Liberty, destroying it in one hit. It starts flying, as it launches more energy beams, hitting Andy's arm, so he cuts it off, realizing that it disintegrates anything it hits. He knows that the attack is dangerous, so he thinks about ending the fight, and he charges in, but his body begins to rot. Spoil attacks him, causing him to crash, and it proceeds to pummel him while he's down. It starts talking to Shen and Izumo, and Shen tries to use his ability, but it doesn't work, so he decides to run away. Spoil tells Izumo that the world is uglier without decay, saying it's a necessary rule, but the humans are rejecting it. It says that human bodies won't even last for a year, so it wonders why they are so attached to it. Izumo explains that it's because they need their bodies to pursue their dreams, revealing that she wants to become a normal girl and live life to the fullest. She says that she won't give up no matter what happens, causing the timer on her body to reset. Spoil is surprised to see this, and Shen charges in, managing to land a hit, as he reveals that his dream is to become the greatest in all of creation. Andy warns him not to get too close, or his body will rot, but he reveals that he has already figured out its ability. He explains that when it talked to Izumo, nothing happened to her, so he concludes that it has a spoil field around its body, and it's vulnerable when it sticks its head out. But he reveals that he has a unique staff, and he orders it to extend, allowing him to attack Spoil. We learn that he can control the length of his staff, and he uses it to strike Spoil, as it wonders why its body is approaching him on its own. We learn that Shen's ability is activated when the target is in his field of vision, and it forces the target to perform the opposite of the intended action. So when Spoil is trying to protect itself, it becomes more vulnerable to his attacks, but to activate this ability, he must become fond of his target. Andy wonders how they're supposed to capture Spoil, so Shen explains that it has a core, but he can't remove it, because his body will rot if he gets too close. Spoil struggles against Shen, and it tries to fire an energy beam, but it ultimately fails. Shen recognizes Spoil's powers, revealing that he is happy, because he will finally be able to find the man he's looking for. Izumo wonders how they can stop its ability, and Andy explains that decomposition can't occur without moisture, so he thinks about removing the moisture in the air. He thinks that explosions will do the trick, so he touches Izumo, and he approaches Spoil, but instead of exploding, the ground splits open, causing him to fall. Shen looks away, and Spoil sees an opening, so it tries to attack him, but he manages to defend himself, as he realizes that it's trying to obstruct his vision with the dust clouds, so that he can't use his ability. Izumo thinks about taking Spoil to space, because there's no moisture there, and Shen reveals that he can lift it there, telling Andy that he can defeat it while they're in space, but he will have to endure its ability during the ascent. Shen advises Andy to unlock his memories, knowing his old self will be able to accomplish the task, and he decides to go with Shen's plan, but he says that there will be some stipulations. Shen accepts it, and he throws his staff into the crack, where Andy takes it, and he orders the staff to extend, launching Spoil to the air. He unlocks his memories, and they exit Earth's atmosphere, as Izumo becomes worried, because she recalls that Andy is going to become unstable if he unlocks his memories. Shen knows about this, telling her that she's about to meet the man who brought victory to countless battlefields. Spoil reveals that it can still fire energy beams without moisture, and it hits Andy's head, but he immediately regenerates, as his appearance changes. He tells Spoil that it's no match for him, as he fires 2 of his fingers, and each of them regenerates, creating copies that butcher its body. He manages to take its core, and he allows it to fall with his hand, saying it's time to have fun. We cut to Shen, as he tells the children to leave the area, explaining that they're about to get rescued. Spoil's core crashes to the ground, and Andy's body regenerates from his hand, but Shen advises Izumo to stand back, and he orders Mui to take the core. We see that Andy is struggling with his consciousness, telling his other self that he is wasting his life, and that it's impossible for him to die. He approaches Izumo, blaming her for the mess, but Shen gets in the way, calling him Victor, the god of victory. But he explains that he's only human, and he attacks Shen, overpowering him, as he wonders why his ability isn't working on Victor. He notes that Victor has superhuman strength, because he is striking with all of his might, allowing his bones to break with each attack. He shoots his fingers, blowing Shen away, and Izumo tries to use her ability, but she realizes that it isn't working. Shen orders Mui to send a message, as Victor calls Izumo pathetic, telling her to give up on trying to kill him. He threatens to kill her, but she calls out to Andy, imploring him to return. Victor calls her an idiot, but Shen interrupts him, admitting that he is lost, because he isn't strong enough to defeat Victor. But he recalls the first promise he made to Andy, which is to protect Izumo, so he pushes Victor back. But he thinks about the second promise, which is to defeat Victor, knowing he can't do it on his own. A portal opens, as the other members of the Union arrive, so Victor tries to shoot them, but they are able to block it, and Nico attacks him, slicing him in half. He notices that he isn't regenerating, as Nico reveals that his injuries have been burned, so he won't be able to heal as fast. But Victor reveals that he can choose where he regenerates, and he shoots his finger, allowing him to restore his body. He warns the Union members not to interfere, but they stand their ground, so he prepares to take them on, and Jules confronts him, ready to fight to the death. Jules manages to cut him, but he just flies up, shooting out his fingers to create clones of himself. He tries to attack Shen, but they are saved by Top. They manage to get away, but Izumo finds it strange that Top is still running. She wonders how they can stop Andy, but Top has no idea. She asks to be taken back to Andy, but Top warns her that he's not the same person she knew. She still insists, so Shen gives her a gun for her protection, as well as Andy's seal. She runs off, and Top tells Shen to stop her, but he just calls her interesting, and Top ends up agreeing to take her back. Meanwhile, we see the other Union members fighting Victor, but he just keeps regenerating no matter what. Top wonders what they can do, but Izumo is able to determine that Andy is within the copy that's fighting Jules, since Clothy is attached to him. Top isn't convinced, but Izumo tells him to throw her at him. As Jules fights with him, Izumo lunges at him, while lifting up her shirt, hugging him with her chest. Everyone is shocked, but all the clones seem to be destroyed. She waits for her bad luck to take effect, so she can put his seal back in, and Jules wonders how long it will take, but Izumo doesn't know since she has never held onto someone she hates. Jules thinks her bad luck would work if it was Andy, so she says they need to bring Andy back even if it's just for a second. Victor refuses to let that happen, shooting out his fingers to create his clones, but the other Union members protect her. Izumo worries for them, but they tell her to focus on waking Andy up. She calls out to him, begging Andy to come back, so Victor tries to attack her, but gets stopped by Top. Izumo thinks about how to wake him up, thinking back to everything they've been through, and how he saved her the first time they met. She uses her gun, shooting the scar on his head, realizing that none of his clones have the scar, determining that's where Andy is being kept. She calls out to him, begging him to reach out to her, and Andy is able to return for the moment. He takes the chance to kiss her, destroying all the copies, and he tells her they'll continue next time. Izumo gets embarrassed hearing this, running away as she warns the others that the bad luck is coming. They all start to retreat, but Victor regains control of his body, preparing to stop them, but Shin emerges, using his ability to stop him. Victor accepts his defeat, and meteors rain down on him, causing a massive explosion, which creates a tidal wave, but the others are protected by Nico's barrier. The town is completely destroyed, but Izumo rushes down to find Andy. She makes it to him, stabbing him with his seal, but the water comes flooding back in. When Izumo wakes up, she calls out for Andy, but he is right by her side. She vents her frustration at him for his reckless plan, thinking she would be alone again if it had failed. He apologizes to her, but she worries about him touching her head. He tells her her voice was the only thing he was able to hear when he was swallowed up, thanking her for saving him. She gets happy hearing him say this, and he tries to act cool, but he gets hit by his bad luck. The Union have their meeting, and Izumo apologizes for being late, while Shen is happy they are okay. She thinks Andy is in the wrong seat, but he reminds her how he moved up to rank 9 after the Clothy incident. The meeting continues, and Apocalypse prepares to announce the results of their quests. Apocalypse announces that the first quest has been completed, because the Union was able to capture the UMA, Burn, and an 11th seat has been added as a reward. The second quest is also successful, because they were able to capture another UMA called Eat, and as a reward, Apocalypse reveals the location of the negator, Unburn, telling everyone that they can capture him if they need him. We learn that Nico was able to complete the third quest, so Apocalypse unifies the world's languages, allowing everyone to communicate in English, as it reveals that the memories of the normal people have been altered. Shin decides to test this, calling Mui and asking her a question in Chinese, but she has no idea what he's saying, so he concludes that the unification has already taken effect. Apocalypse announces that the fourth quest is a success, and as a reward, the location of the artifact, Rebellion, has been revealed. The fifth quest was completed by Andy and Izumo when they captured Spoil, so Apocalypse rewards them by revealing the location of the negator Rip, who has the power of unrepair. Izumo gets excited about this, thinking Andy might be able to get the real death that he wants, but we see Andy isn't as excited as her. Apocalypse tells them they failed the sixth quest, which was to capture the negator unseen, and Andy thinks that he was taken by Rip, because they sent men to look for him, but they all ended up bleeding to death. We see that Andy is right, because Unseen has been captured by Rip, who put a homing device in his stomach to ensure that he can't escape. Rip invites him to join his group, promising to deactivate his ability if Unseen agrees to his proposal. Apocalypse explains that there's going to be a penalty because they failed to complete a quest, and it summons the UMA called Galaxy. It takes the form of an enormous creature, which leaves the Union as it takes to the sky. Jules summons the tamed UMA Move, ordering it to transport them to the surface, so it opens a warp gate, which causes them to fall, and they immediately reach Australia, as Move tells them that it has done its part. Izumo thinks that the penalty isn't too bad, but Jules tells her that the UMAs added by Apocalypse are always dangerous, saying it could lead to the extinction of humanity. Galaxy leaves the atmosphere, and it causes a massive explosion, which alters the celestial bodies in the cosmos. The universe changes, and Nico contacts his subordinates, telling them that a new rule has just been added, so he tells them to fill him in. They attach themselves to a device, which instantly transmits their knowledge to Nico, allowing him to learn all the changes that happened after the new rule was added. He explains that new planets have appeared, and the world has completely changed, saying the aliens are about to invade Earth. An alien fleet appears, as Nico explains that they are from an advanced civilization, and they are invading other planets because their home world is on a path to ruin. Their leader appears, explaining that they're going to invade Earth, but Jules approaches him, telling him to withdraw his ships. But he fires an energy beam, causing an enormous explosion, and he tells her that humans don't stand a chance because their civilization is underdeveloped. He threatens to wipe out all of humanity, saying he's fighting for what's right because his people need the planet to survive. But Jules removes her helmet, and we learn that she has the ability to negate a person's sense of justice, allowing her to control the actions of others. The ships start firing at each other, and the alien fleet is completely destroyed as the leader falls into despair. Jules explains that the penalty is always severe, and the world would have been destroyed if it wasn't for her ability. She reveals that this is the 99th penalty added by Apocalypse, and they can't afford to fail another quest, because they discovered a stone tablet which has 101 slots, and one of them is filled every time they receive a penalty. She explains that there are 2 slots left, and the final slot is labeled as Ragnarok, which could mean the end of the world. She reveals that Apocalypse won't give the next quests until they add the 11th member, and they will receive a penalty after 3 months, so she thinks that finding a new member is their top priority. She realizes that the leader is still alive, because he never believed that he was fighting for what's right, so she tells him to warn the aliens to stay away from Earth, and he immediately retreats. Jules suggests recruiting Rip, and Andy volunteers to look for him. She thinks that he will need backup, so she tells him to take Tatiana and Azumah with him. Andy and Azumah fly to Brazil, and we learn that they are going to infiltrate a black market auction conducted by the Mafia, where a negator is going to be sold. Andy explains that it will take place in a luxury liner, and they need to enter the ship to find Rip, revealing that they have guest passes created by Nico. He knows that they won't blend in with their current attire, because the auction is going to be attended by celebrities, so he suggests dressing up for the mission. They enter a mall, where Andy wears a suit, and Azumah thinks he looks great, so he decides to buy it. She tries looking for a dress, but she isn't used to wearing a revealing outfit, so he helps her pick one, telling her that he won't let anyone touch her. She recalls her conversation with Jules, where she wondered why she was chosen for the mission, thinking she's going to be a burden. Jules explains that she wants to protect the world, and she thought that Azumah was a threat to innocent people, which was why she ordered Shen and Void to kill her. But she recalls their fight with Victor, saying Azumah's ability has potential, and she thinks that Azumah might be the key to defeating God, reminding her that Ragnarok is approaching. Jules orders her to connect with Andy, thinking she will unlock her full potential if she falls in love with him. Azumah wears a dress, and Andy tells her that she looks great, giving her advice on how to project herself, and he thinks that she looks perfect, so they decide to buy it. They walk around the streets, as Andy reminds Azumah that she kissed Victor, saying she should kiss him now that he has control over his body, but she starts running away, because she doesn't want to do it. He chases after her, telling her that he deserves the kiss, but she threatens to trigger his bad luck. But he isn't worried, knowing he's covered with clothes, but she calls out to Clothy, and it exposes his skin, allowing her to touch him. A truck hits him, blowing him away, and he falls into the ocean, where he gets eaten by a shark. Andy is washed ashore, and he tells Azumah that Victor is the original owner of the body, saying he's only in control if his memories are sealed. He's worried that Victor might return, but she assures him that she will always be there to save him. He holds onto her, but she realizes that her gloves are off, and Tatiana crashes into him, reminding them about their mission. She tells them that they will look for Rip in the luxury liner, while she searches for him outside, advising them to pretend that they're a couple, because their guest passes mention that they're married. They are able to enter the ship, and they hear people talking about the negator, who is revealed to be the main item for the auction. The people mention that negators are becoming easier to find, and Izumo wonders how this happened, so Andy explains that this is because of the language unification, reminding her that it only took effect for non-negators. He tells her that Shen can only talk to them because of his necktie, saying everyone is using the English language, so the negators who can't speak English are standing out. Izumo realizes that negators are being treated harshly, and Andy tells her that they won't be able to live good lives, but he thinks they can change this, saying they can kill God to remove the source of their abilities. We see Rip with his associate Mira, as the guards stop them, telling them that the area is off limits. But he refuses to leave, so they threaten to kill him, and he asks Mira if he's going to die. She tells him that they're going to shoot his head, but he instantly dashes past them, slicing their necks and causing them to bleed out. A massive creature emerges, and it launches his companions, Creed and Feng, allowing them to join him. He tells them about the negator at the auction, and Creed mocks Mira because she's supposed to be a fortune teller, but her predictions are inaccurate. Tatiana sees them, so she warns Andy and Izumo, telling them that Rip's group is after the negator at the auction. Jules reveals that they are known as the Negator Hunters, and they specialize in collecting negators by force. They are similar to the Union, but their goals are different, because the Union wants to kill God to get rid of the rules, while the Negator Hunters want to seek revenge against the world. Andy and Izumo make their way to the cargo, trying to reach the negator before the hunters find him. But the guards start firing at them, so Tatiana gives Andy his sword, and he uses it to slice his head off. Izumo throws him to the guards, and his bad luck is triggered, causing an explosion which allows them to escape. They rush to the negator, but they see explosives along the way, and it detonates, causing an explosion which alerts the guard at the cargo. The negator Chikara uses this chance to escape, but the guard sees him, so he uses his ability, causing the guard to stop moving. But we learn that he can only use his ability while he's immobile, so he realizes that he can't escape because the guard is about to shoot him, and he wonders how the Mafia found out about his ability because he didn't tell anyone about it. In a flashback, we see Chikara going to school, and his friend tries to talk to him, but he wonders why everyone is speaking in English, thinking they're playing a prank on him. But they can't understand what he's saying, and at that moment, he gets abducted by the Mafia, knowing he's a negator, because he wasn't speaking in English. Back in the present, Chikara sees monsters in the cargo, so he starts to freak out, realizing he's in trouble because he needs to be completely immobile for his ability to take effect. The guard starts moving, preparing to shoot his leg, but at that moment, Rip arrives, taking out the guard. He was able to observe Chikara, thinking his ability could be useful, but he can't understand what Rip is saying, so they can't communicate with each other. Creed decides to test him, pulling out a minigun and telling him that he's about to get shot, so he needs to use his ability to survive. Rip thinks that it doesn't matter if he dies, because he won't be useful if he can't defend himself, revealing that his ability will transfer to a new user after his death. Creed prepares to shoot him, but he can't stop shaking, thinking he's going to die because he can't control his ability. Creed fires relentlessly, and everyone thinks he's dead, but as the dust clears, they realize that Andy protected him. Andy observes them, trying to guess their abilities, but Rip suddenly attacks him, slicing his neck and telling him that his wound won't heal unless he defeats him. Andy tries to cut his head off, but he realizes that he can't, as Rip explains that his unrepair negates all kinds of healing techniques, so Andy can't cut off his body parts to repair his body. Rip knows that he's working for the Union, telling him to hand over Chikara because they want to kill him, saying his ability is useful, but he can't use it properly, so they need to transfer it to someone else. But Andy charges forward, as Izumo slices his head off, using it as a projectile. Tatiana arrives, attacking Creed and Feng, as she tells Andy that she will deal with them. He charges in, trying to slash Rip, but he manages to dodge it, and he counters, slicing off Andy's arms. He approaches the sword, but Rip tells him that it won't work, because he can't cut his body parts to heal himself. But he slices off his forearms, and launches them at Rip, who wonders how this is possible. But Mira protects him, causing the attack to miss, and he realizes that his rule didn't apply to Andy, because he didn't cut his forearms to heal, but to launch an attack. Rip admits that he likes him, inviting him to join the Negator Hunters, but he refuses, saying he isn't interested. Rip thinks that Chikara is useless, because he can't control his ability, so they don't need him in the group, saying they only need strong negators to dominate the world. Izumo tells Rip not to make the people suffer, saying they should blame God instead, but he tells her that they already have enough problems, and fighting God is too risky. Andy tries to kill Mira, and she gets covered in blood, but he completely misses, wondering if she negated his attack. Rip throws his knife, trying to kill Chikara, and Andy tries to block it, but it pierces through his body. Izumo gets in the way, and she manages to stop it, but she suffers a fatal injury, and Rip thinks that she only has an hour left to live, because she's going to bleed out. Andy thinks about removing his seal, but she assures him that she's going to be fine, telling him to be his usual self, so he ultimately decides against it. The guards arrive, so Rip decides to retreat, and they surround Andy, thinking he's with the Negator Hunters. Chikara tries to stop the bleeding, but Andy warns him not to touch Izumo, saying he could end up dying. He tells the guards to call a doctor, imploring them to spare her, but they refuse to listen to him. In a flashback, we see Chikara's mother on her deathbed, telling him to cherish the people who show him kindness, because she considers them irreplaceable. She advises him to take a moment to pause when they're in trouble, and get back into action to save them. Back in the present, the guards decide to shoot him, but he musters the courage to stop the bullets, and even the guards are unable to move. Andy is surprised that he was able to control his ability, but he explains that Izumo got hurt because of him, thinking he's a coward, so he's determined to save her. We cut to Tatiana, as she fights Creed and Fang. Creed realizes that his bullets aren't effective, so he throws grenades, as Fang attacks her, and pushes her away. She notes that her armor has been cracked, and Andy contacts her, telling her that Izumo has been injured. He informs her that Izumo will bleed to death, saying the only way to save her is to defeat Rip, and Tatiana becomes angry. In a flashback, we learn that Tatiana was devastated when she learned about Jean's death, so she immediately attacked Andy when he joined the Union, and challenged him to a fight. Andy accepts her challenge, and she tells him that she doesn't recognize him as part of the group, saying she wants to avenge Jean. She tries to attack him, but he dodges her attacks, and she tells him that Jean loved him, but he doesn't care, saying he already knew about her feelings, but he killed her anyway. Tatiana becomes enraged, launching all of her arms, but Andy still manages to dodge them. He notices that Izumo is in trouble, so he rushes to her, saving her just in time. Tatiana can't believe that she almost got Izumo killed, and she realizes that Izumo would be dead if it wasn't for Andy. Nico tells her to calm down, saying the next quest will decide if Andy and Izumo deserve to be in the Union. But Andy clings to her, and she sees his junk, causing her to become triggered. Everyone is advised to evacuate, and Nico warns Andy that Izumo is in danger because Tatiana's armor was created to contain her ability, which is so powerful that it can destroy an entire city. Nico orders everyone to leave, but Izumo clings to Tatiana, saying it was her ability that killed Jean, and Andy was just fighting to protect her. She apologizes to Tatiana, saying she wants to be her friend, and this causes Tatiana to calm down. After some time, Izumo visits Tatiana in her room, offering to shake hands with her, but she refuses, saying she can't do it because of her ability. Izumo tells her that she can use her robotic hands, saying she can use her real hand after they defeat God, and they end up becoming friends. Back in the present, Chikara reveals that he can no longer maintain his ability, so Andy helps him escape. Andy tells Tatiana that he needs to defeat Rip, so he can't back her up, but she tells him to retreat, as she prepares to unleash her true power. She thinks about Izumo, realizing that she's a great person, so she became one of her closest friends. Tatiana can't forgive the Negator Hunters for hurting Izumo, and she releases her armor. Creed thinks she's vulnerable, so he tries to shoot her, but it doesn't work, and he realizes that there's another barrier protecting her. So he tries to fill the room with poison gas, thinking it should be enough to kill her. In another flashback, we see Tatiana's family celebrating her 5th birthday, but her ability suddenly awakens, destroying everything around her. The police rush to the scene, and she decides to run away, but she ends up getting kidnapped by the mafia. She's about to be sold in an auction, but Billy arrives and shoots everyone down. He approaches her, but she tells him to shoot her, saying her life is miserable because of her ability. He tells her to open her mouth, but instead of shooting her, he gives her food, telling her that he made it himself. He explains that her ability produces an untouchable barrier around her body, but opening her mouth creates a hole in her barrier. He knows that she's been drinking liquid through a tube, so he made long bars of cake for her to enjoy, and she ends up joining the union. Nico creates an armor for her, allowing her to contain her barrier, which continues to expand with each passing year. He tells her that she's been suppressing her powers, so unleashing it will have a devastating effect. And Billy tells her that she can use her ability to save people, advising her not to hold back when she needs to protect someone important. Back in the present, Tatiana is determined to protect Izumo, so she decides to go all out, expanding her barrier, which destroys everything that it touches. It continues to expand until the ship is completely destroyed. Andy sees Rip, and he prepares to shoot him, determined to save Izumo before she bleeds to death. Andy launches his finger, but he misses, and they start fighting in mid-air, as Andy notes that Rip must have an escape plan, thinking Izumo will die if they can't defeat him. He tells Chikara to use his power, so he stops Rip from moving, as he notes that they're at a stalemate, because Andy can't move either. He thinks Chikara is planning to buy time, but Andy shoots his finger, which stops before hitting his target. So he realizes that Chikara's ability only works in his field of vision, and Andy can still move his hand, because Chikara can't see it. Andy orders him to deactivate his ability, and the finger hits Mira, but she survives, because it lost speed due to air resistance. Chikara uses his ability again, but Rip disappears, and they realize that he's already above them, using his artifact to attack with a blade. Andy realizes that Chikara can't use his ability, because he's freaking out, so Andy tells him to tuck his legs, before getting sliced in half. Rip notes that Chikara hasn't mastered his ability, because he always loses his composure, and he manages to stop Rip, but he realizes that there are countless blades approaching them. He admits that he's scared, and Andy tells Izumo that they're going to need her power to survive, because they need to get past Myra's ability. He notes that she can't defend Rip against surprise attacks, so they need to catch her off guard, and he comes up with a plan, but he mentions that they need to get close enough for it to work. So Tatiana expands her barrier, allowing them to close the distance, but as Andy prepares to attack, his blood ends up in Chikara's eyes, disabling his ability. Rip launches his blade, but Andy uses his blood as a projectile, allowing him to match its strength. But Andy notes that he attacked with his full strength, realizing that Rip has the advantage, so he thinks about ending the fight. Izumo kisses him, and he tells Chikara that a meteor is about to fall on him, saying he's planning to use it against Rip. But he knows that it's going to miss because of Myra's power, so he tells Chikara that he needs help. Rip uses his artifact to launch blades, slicing Andy into pieces, but he clings to Rip, as Chikara is worried that he might ruin the plan. But Andy assures him that they will succeed, because they're willing to risk their lives to help others. Chikara and Izumo land on Tatiana's barrier, and the meteor is about to hit Rip, but he knows that Myra's power will protect him. It ends up hitting the ocean, and Andy starts flying away, as Tatiana charges at Rip, who thinks that Andy won't be able to harm him, because he's suffered an unrepairable injury, and his attack would count as a healing technique. So Rip thinks he's no longer a threat, charging at Chikara, but we learn that this is part of their plan, as Chikara uses his ability to stop Rip. Andy can still move, because he's hidden behind Rip, so Chikara's ability doesn't affect him, and he concentrates his power on his finger, allowing him to launch it with incredible speed. It ends up hitting Rip, destroying his heart, as he realizes that Andy put everything on the line to save his friends. Rip is surprised to learn that there are people willing to die for others, and his body loses strength, so Mira summons an orca, which allows them to ride it. Izumo wonders who they are, but Mira tells her to ask Rip, saying he's going to survive. They're able to escape, and Tatiana wonders if Izumo has stopped bleeding, but Andy tells her not to worry, because his wounds are starting to heal, so Rip's ability has been deactivated. We learn that he fired his finger from 100 meters away, and he knew that it would lose speed before it reaches the target. So he decided to focus his regeneration powers into it, but this left him exposed, because he can't heal until he recovers. But he knew that he could count on his friends, and Rip was defeated because he underestimated their teamwork, thinking they were only acting out of self-interest. Andy thanks his friends, knowing he couldn't have won without them, and Izumo wonders if Chikara wants to join the Union, saying they won't tell Jules about him if he refuses, because she will force him to join if she finds out. Andy tells him that he has 1 week to decide, and as they fly back to Japan, Chikara recalls his mother's words, thinking about joining the Union. A few days later, we see Chikara back in his school, enjoying a normal life, because Andy gave him a necktie translator, which allows him to communicate with his classmates. We see Andy and Izumo waiting for him at the school gate, wondering if he's going to join them, because Andy told him to meet them if he has made up his mind. But he isn't showing up, and Andy thinks he's going to die if his resolve is weak, so he thinks that it's better for him to enjoy life as a student. Izumo agrees, saying he will never return if he ends up dying, but Rip suddenly appears, telling her it's not true, and she's surprised to see him, wondering how he's still alive. He tells her that he died, because Andy shot him through the heart, but he was revived as a kid, saying he'll return to normal. Izumo wonders what he's doing there, but Andy suddenly hits him, threatening to beat him up. He realizes that Andy is upset, because he almost killed Izumo, but he recalls that she jumped in harm's way, so he thinks that Andy shouldn't blame him for what happened. He wonders if she has already recovered, so she tells him that a doctor treated her wounds, and he's glad to hear this. He tells Andy not to be so hard on him, because he already made peace with her, saying he has a gift for them. He pulls out a gun, revealing that it's an artifact, and he explains that it will help them understand the goal of his group. As Izumo holds it, she gets a vision about a dark figure, which appears to be responsible for setting the world on fire, causing her to panic. Andy touches it, and he gets the same vision, so he inquires about the artifact, because it's nothing like the ones he encountered. Rip explains that artifacts bring different images into the mind, but the gun is unique, because it seems to reveal how the world is going to end. He thinks that the dark figure is God, saying the Union will never be able to defeat it, so his goal is to rule the world before it comes to an end, and Andy thinks he's ridiculous. But we learn that the members of the Union have clashed with Rip's group, as he explains that the world isn't fair, because it continues to survive because of negators, but they're living miserable lives. He reveals that his group is called Under, saying he plans to change the world, to make it a better place for negators. He asks them what they think about the vision, inviting them to join his group, but Andy refuses, saying he's determined to defeat God, so Rip wishes them luck, and he suddenly disappears. They realize that Chikara has arrived, and Andy mentions that they're going to kill God, causing him to freak out, because he didn't know about their goal. So he starts running away, saying he has changed his mind, and Izumo runs after him, so he uses his ability, causing her to stop. But he realizes that Andy is gone, and he appears behind Chikara, saying they just want to talk to him. He reveals that his classroom is empty, so Andy tells Izumo to disguise herself as a student, thinking it's a good place to hold their discussion. Upon arriving at the classroom, Chikara inquires about the end of the world, so Andy tells him that it's going to happen in a few months. He mentions that he wants to continue living, but he also wants to atone for his sins, revealing that he's responsible for the death of his parents. In a flashback, we see Chikara walking around the streets with his parents. As they're about to cross the road, he takes the shopping bags and walks ahead of them, telling them to hurry. But at that moment, he awakens his ability, causing them to stop in the middle of the road, and he sees that a truck is about to ram into them. So he tries to save them, but the truck hits them, killing his father in an instant. His mother survives, but she's severely injured, and she ends up dying in the hospital. Back in the present, Izumo starts crying, as she recalls that she was also responsible for the death of her parents, and Chikara recalls that his mother told him to take action for others. He explains that he wanted to take his own life, because he feels guilty for what happened, but he knows that his parents would want him to survive. So he decided to keep on living, thinking his parents would be proud of him if he lives a peaceful life, but he ended up getting caught by the mafia. He's glad that he was able to meet Andy and Izumo, because they taught him that his ability can be used to help others. He thinks that he can atone for his sins by joining the Union, and he apologizes for trying to run away, saying he will stay with them if they accept him into the group. But at that moment, his friend named Rio arrives, telling Chikara that it's time to go home. But he sees Andy, wondering who he is, because he's too old to be a student. Izumo starts laughing, and Rio inquires about her, thinking Chikara is in trouble. So he tries to explain the situation, but Andy starts tickling Izumo, causing her to laugh uncontrollably, and she eventually becomes exhausted. Rio reveals that he's going to a university on a basketball scholarship, and Chikara is happy to hear this, thinking Rio has a bright future ahead of him. But the Union's car arrives, and Andy tells Chikara that it's time to go, so he approaches Andy, but Rio is surprised, wondering what he's doing. But he uses his ability, stopping Rio, and thanking him for everything, because he made Chikara enjoy his life as a student. They leave through the window, and Rio sees Chikara entering the car, asking him what's happening, but he refuses to answer the question. So Rio runs after him, thinking he's in trouble, but he tells Andy to alter the people's memories, thinking it'd be better if nobody remembers him, and Andy tells Nico to do it, so he makes everyone forget about Chikara. Rio is about to reach the car, but he suddenly becomes confused, wondering what he's doing there, and he returns to the classroom. Chikara cries as the car drives away, and Izumo mentions that she wants to defeat God, thinking it would make the world a better place. So she asks Andy to teach her how to fight, and Jules learns about Chikara, so she creates a training regimen for him and Izumo. 2 months later, the members of the Union gather at the round table, and Apocalypse prepares to give them their next quest, reminding them that the 100th penalty is at stake. It mentions that the quests for this round are open to everyone, so anyone can participate, and it reveals that the first quest is to defeat the UMA Spring, saying the location of the Aegis artifact will be revealed as a reward. The UMA Summer needs to be neutralized for the second quest, and the reward for completing it is the location of the Negator Unchange. The third quest is to capture the UMA Autumn, and the UMA Ghost will be added upon completion. The UMA Winter must be defeated to complete the fourth quest, and the location of the artifact called Remember will be revealed as a reward. Apocalypse explains that they have a month to finish the quests, saying the UMA Revolution will be added if they fail. Jules thinks that the quests are going to be difficult, as she mentions that this is the first time outsiders are allowed to participate. She suggests forming an alliance with everyone, but Billy interrupts her, reminding her that the stakes are high, and they can't afford to lose a member, because they will lose the next round if they suffer casualties. He reminds them that only one UMA needs to be captured, so he suggests dropping nukes on the other UMAs, thinking it should be enough to kill them. Tatiana tells him that innocent people will be killed, but he doesn't care, saying their lives don't matter. He mentions that Jules is naive, because she's always seeking a better outcome, reminding her that the world is about to end. He thinks that the Union will never defeat God, and he shoots everyone, so they defend themselves, but the Negator Ishin ends up getting shot. Andy and Shen threaten him, as Andy recalls that they failed to capture Unseen, because he was taken by Rip, thinking Billy exposed his location. Billy notes that Jules is slow, because she still hasn't decided what to do with him, and Top is worried about Ishin, but Billy thinks he did a great job, because he was able to kill Unbreakable. Top becomes upset, so he attacks Billy, breaking his neck, and calling him a traitor. But he suddenly recovers, surprising everyone, and he wonders why they care about the lives of the incompetent, because they're completely useless, saying the world isn't fair. The ground shatters, and the UMA Burn appears with the members of Under, as Billy mentions that they will be taking the round table. Izumo notices that Tatiana is crying, and Andy thinks that Billy is working with Under. But Tatiana thinks that the man is an imposter, because Billy doesn't have the power to recover from a fatal wound. She explains that his power is called Unbelievable, and it allows him to manipulate the path of his bullets, claiming she's the only one who knows about his power. Chikara freaks out, because Burn looks intimidating, so he runs away, saying he will return after he calms down. Rip notes that he's still a coward, but considers him as a threat, knowing he wouldn't have lost if Chikara didn't stop him. He calls Billy his boss, and Tatiana is devastated to hear this, as everyone realizes that he's the head of Under. Top charges at him, trying to take him down, but he suddenly launches Top to the air, and sends him crashing to the ground. Andy wonders how Billy was able to move so fast, and we see that he broke his leg, as he notes that Top's power allows him to move with ridiculous speed, but he needs to break his body parts to stop. But Billy thinks it shouldn't be a problem, and he uses Andy's power, allowing him to heal his leg. Shin tries to use his ability, as he launches an attack, but he realizes that it isn't working, thinking it's because he doesn't like Billy. Andy prepares to launch his finger, but Billy uses Jules' powers, allowing him to control the situation. He mentions that he can see into their hearts, saying Andy wants to protect Izumo, while Shen wants to become stronger. He adds that Jules wants to lead, and she wonders how he's able to use her powers. Billy tells them that he'll be taking their powers with him, and he orders Burn to hit them, forcing them to retreat. He tells Tatiana to go with him because he needs her ability, reminding her that he was the one who saved her from the mafia. But Izumo shoots him, saying she understands what it's like to be saved by someone, so she knows that Billy is important to Tatiana. But she tells him that he betrayed them, saying Tatiana must be devastated because of him. She decides not to join him, so he tells her that she's also his enemy, and he's about to leave with the Round Table. But Jules mentions that they'll never defeat God if the Round Table is taken away, so she thinks they should retrieve it at all costs. Andy tells Izumo to use her power, but Jules wonders if his plan is going to work, telling him that Burn is a force to be reckoned with. But he remains positive, saying he has encountered Mira, so he knows that ordinary attacks won't be effective because of her ability, and they need to rely on Izumo's power to stand a chance. Jules agrees to this, and she announces that Billy has betrayed the Union, ordering the other members to help Andy and Izumo, as she explains that they need to stop Burn, because it's lifting the Round Table. She orders Nico to treat the wounded, telling him to order his subordinates to stop Burn by controlling the facility, and she tells Shen to go to the depository with the negator Phil, thinking Under will try to steal artifacts from them. She orders Chikara to stop her bleeding, telling Tatiana to stand by, as Izumo tells her that they're going to find out what's happening, saying Billy is a great person. She tells Izumo to save him, and Izumo flies with Andy, as Jules announces the beginning of the operation. Meanwhile, Rip thinks the Union is weak, but Billy tells him not to underestimate them, saying they were only caught off guard, so he knows that it's only a matter of time before they take action. Rip tells him that Under will help him kill God, but he mentions that Billy promised to give them a reward, which is the only reason why they're working for him. We cut to Nico's subordinates, as the scientist Miko moves the cryo-storage units of massive UMAs above Burn. Nico orders her to add the electromagnetic cables for good measure, saying they need to prepare the place for Izumo's misfortune, because it's the only way to stop Burn. We return to Izumo, as she tells Andy that he should speak to Billy. He thinks that Rip and Billy don't have the same goal, so he believes that they may be able to talk it out, but he recalls that Billy made Tatiana cry, so he wants to beat him up. They catch up to Burn, as Jules informs them that the preparations are complete. Upon seeing them, Billy uses Jules's power, forcing Andy to slice his head off, but he reveals that this is part of their plan, as Izumo kisses him, and he launches his head at Burn. Izumo warns everyone that a massive stroke of bad luck is approaching, and the electromagnetic cables malfunction, causing an explosion, but Burn manages to survive. Miko activates the cryo-storage units, and Burn is completely frozen, so it starts falling, but Billy thinks that this won't be enough to stop them. Miko is about to activate the pile cannon, but Izumo's power causes it to malfunction, and it activates at the perfect moment, causing Burn to get impaled. Andy tells Billy that he can't escape, saying he will pay for making Tatiana cry. Andy charges at him with incredible speed, and he manages to land a devastating blow, breaking Billy's neck. But he notes that Andy experiences pain despite his powers, and he slowly recovers, saying he respects Andy for having the resolve to endure the pain. Andy tells Izumo to hand over her weapons, because she could end up killing herself, and Billy starts moving with ridiculous speed, as he uses Top's ability. Andy notes that he can predict the movements, but Billy hits him, blowing him away, and telling him that he doesn't have time to react. But Billy realizes that his leg has been cut off, so he acknowledges Andy's skills, thinking he should target Izumo, because she's Andy's weakness. He uses Jules' powers, as Izumo notes that her vision of justice is to survive, so she's being forced to take her own life, and she falls off the round table. Andy rushes to save her, as he thinks about Billy's fighting style, realizing that he has the power to copy the abilities of the Union members. Burn recovers, as Miko realizes that they weren't able to destroy its core, and it starts flying away, so everyone panics. But Jules tells them to calm down, and we see that Tatiana has joined Izumo and Andy, saying she wants to talk to Billy. Jules asks her if she still has feelings for him, saying the success of the operation depends on her answer. Billy is about to get away, but Tatiana charges at him, asking him why he betrayed them, and he explains that the world is unfair, so he wants to change it. He tells her that she doesn't matter, and he negates her sense of justice, thinking it will force her to stop attacking. But we learn that she still has feelings for him, and she expands her barrier, pushing him away. He realizes that the Union was able to outsmart him because they sent Tatiana to attack him, knowing she wants to save him. Izumo grabs Apocalypse as Andy tells Billy that they can't accept quests without it. But at that moment, she gets a vision about the Union's history, revealing that Victor was one of its first members. She feels a tremendous pain as Apocalypse reveals that it has more memories than other artifacts, so her brain can't handle the information, telling her that she's going to go nuts. It tries to escape, but Phil grabs it as it realizes that he isn't going insane because he has the ability to negate his feelings. Shen catches up to them, and Billy tells Andy that he can borrow Apocalypse until the deadline, but Under will secure the Ark, saying they won't let Jules have it. Shen and Andy can't understand Billy because they don't know what the Ark is, and he escapes with the round table. But Jules decides to leave him alone, saying the Union needs to reconvene because she has something important to tell them. The group gathers, and they start to think something is off, thinking back to some of the things that have happened, like how Victor recognized Jules when he was sealed away for 200 years, and how she didn't seem to care when the UMA galaxy was added. Jules takes off her helmet, and she reveals that the world is on a loop, where God constantly destroys and renews it. The members are shocked, and Izumo realizes that the images from the artifacts come from previous loops. Jules sees it as the memories of her failure, but she has assembled a group of the strongest negators so that they can kill God and break free. Andy wonders why she's the only one who's aware of the loop, so she explains it's because she used the Ark. Andy asks for proof, so Jules decides to explain how the world will end and begin. She tells them that the world ends when the Earth is destroyed by God's hand, blowing it to pieces. God will then create a new Earth, and some of the fragments from the old Earth can still remain, noting that the meteors that Izumo can summon are those fragments. There isn't much else she can offer as proof, but she also points out a mole on the back of Andy's ear. Izumo checks and sees that it's true, so she gets flustered realizing they were close. But Andy tells her to calm down since Victor was the one she was close with. Izumo summarizes the situation, that the world is constantly destroyed, but thanks to the Ark, Jules is the only one who gets to go to the next world. Jules notes that she wasn't the only one, because even when the Earth is destroyed, Andy will regenerate, so he also goes to the next world. Andy realizes his only option to die is by killing God, and Jules feels bad about manipulating everyone. She thinks that Billy's betrayal was because news of the loop somehow leaked, wanting to take responsibility, but she asks them all to help her see things through to the end. Shen makes her stand with his ability, not wanting to see her like that, and the others all agree to follow her. They set up another table, and Jules notes that their first priority is to find Billy in his base, because if they leave him alone, he will end up sacrificing everyone since he was willing to fire nukes to complete the quests. She gives Izumo and Andy a separate mission, telling them to check the legitimacy of a certain book, which was written by an artifact, and it has details of past and future events. Since Billy rebelled, the future will be different, so the book will be crucial when it comes to clearing the quests. Izumo wonders why she was chosen to handle such an important task, so Jules reveals that it's because the book they're talking about is actually her favorite book. Izumo knows that it was created by the author called Unknown, and Jules tells everyone about Volume 20, saying aliens were about to destroy a school. But they played soccer against the school's team, and they ended up losing, because the team captain used his justice shot to destroy the goals. Jules explains that it's similar to their encounter with the aliens, and she tells them about the other volumes, revealing that it predicted the outcome of their missions. Top finds this ridiculous, saying he doesn't know about the manga, but Izumo is surprised to hear this, calling it the best manga in the world, and Tatiana tells him to read it. Izumo reveals that there are 101 volumes, but she wonders why Unknown's identity still remains a mystery. Jules believes that the raw manuscript is still in Japanese, thinking the manga was created using an artifact, so it shouldn't be affected by the language unification. She orders Andy and Izumo to search for the manuscript, and Andy knows that it's with the company that published the book. But he thinks that the publisher won't entertain them unless they present something, so they decide to make a manga. After some time, Andy and Izumo are about to start working on the manga, but Izumo falls into despair, thinking she isn't a good writer, so Andy decides to help her, teaching her all the steps. She wonders if he has written a manga before, and he denies this, but he tells her that he tried to make one, so he knows the basics. He tells her that it takes passion to complete a draft, so he advises her to create an imaginary boyfriend and think about situations that would excite her. Izumo starts working on the draft, as she mentions that her favorite manga might hold the key to defeating Billy. Andy wonders if she's doing this for Tatiana, but she explains that writing a good manga might help her understand her feelings better, thinking this could enhance her abilities. She eventually finishes her draft, showing it to Andy, who thinks it's amazing, so he calls everyone, saying he needs help with the storyboard. Mui and Miko appear, saying they're willing to help, and Shen wonders if he can join them, but Andy tells him to get lost, saying his powers are too dangerous. Izumo knows that it takes ages to create a manga, but Miko straps a device on her, and it gives her artificial arms, but she struggles to control it. Andy explains that it will help them finish the manga faster, but she still can't control it, so she starts to panic, but he tells her to get used to it. Tatiana gives her advice, telling her to imagine watching herself from above, and we see that Tatiana has mastered using the arms. Izumo finds her advice helpful, and she manages to control the device, thanking Tatiana for her help. She wants to work on the manga, but she's worried that she'll take up too much space in the room, but Izumo tells her she can join them. Andy arrives, saying they have finished the storyboard, and everyone starts making the manga, using the device to draw the scenes with ridiculous speed. Moments later, Jules enters the room, and she starts working with them, as Izumo reveals that she read her favorite manga again. But she wonders why Billy's betrayal wasn't covered, saying there were awkward gaps between the scenes, which made the story difficult to understand. We see that Izumo's companions are already exhausted, but she continues working, and she's able to finish the manga, which is based on her adventure with Andy. Andy and Izumo make their way to the publishing company, but Izumo tells Andy that she wants to enter alone because he doesn't look like an artist, saying their goal is to win credibility. She tells him to wait for her, and she enters the building, where she meets the girl named Tahoka. Tahoka reads her manga, asking her how long it took for her to complete it, but she doesn't want to tell the truth, because they were able to finish it in one day. So she tells Tahoka that it took her a week, but she becomes surprised, and Izumo realizes that it usually takes longer than that. Tahoka thinks that the composition is excellent, but her art style is terrible, telling her that she has no taste in design. But Tahoka reveals that she likes it, because she can feel that Izumo loves the hero of the story, asking her if she has an undead boyfriend. But she denies this, saying she would fall in love if the hero of the story is real. Tahoka invites her to join a manga contest, and she accepts the invitation, but she mentions that she has a request. She tells Tahoka about her favorite manga, saying she wants to see the manuscript, and Tahoka agrees to this, saying she's going to break the rules to give Izumo a treat. But upon seeing it, she becomes surprised, because she can't understand the text, and Izumo reports that it's in Japanese, so Jules realizes that she was right about it, calling it a book of prophecy. Izumo asks Tahoka if the manga has rejected storylines, saying there were strange gaps in the story, and Tahoka is surprised that she was able to notice this, revealing that 3 arcs weren't approved. Tahoka mentions the names of the arcs, and everyone realizes that it has something to do with the future. So Jules orders Andy and Izumo to find Unknown, because she wants to know why the arcs weren't included. At that moment, Tahoka calls Unknown, because she thinks that the manuscripts have been replaced, and Izumo asks Tahoka if she can talk to Unknown. Tahoka refuses, but Andy suddenly arrives, causing her to become frightened, so she decides to give the phone to Izumo. Izumo introduces herself, saying she wants Unknown to read her manga, but Tahoka tells her that Unknown doesn't speak to people. But Unknown asks her if her manga is good, and agrees to meet her in Canada, telling her to bring Andy with her. Tahoka is surprised, because this is the first time she heard Unknown's voice, and they leave the publishing company, as they make their way to Unknown. We see Andy and Izumo fighting the Uma Autumn, when Rip arrives, saying Autumn belongs to Under. Andy is about to use Izumo's ability against Autumn, but she suddenly gets hit, causing her to bleed to death. We learn that Unknown saw the tragedy unfold, thinking it's going to happen in the future, and this is the reason why she decided to entertain Izumo. Andy and Izumo ride the jet plane, as Izumo looks forward to meeting Unknown, saying she's a huge fan, and Andy finds Unknown interesting, thinking she's a mysterious person. They arrive at their meeting place, but they realize that it looks strange, because it's the only area in Canada which is experiencing autumn. They wait for unknown, as Andy explains how they should attack her if she tries to get too close, but she casually approaches them and she starts listening in as she reads Izumo's manga. She tells them that she's interested in it, and they're surprised to see her, as Andy wonders how she was able to get too close without being detected. She reveals that Akira is her real name, saying she knows why they're looking for her, and she tells them that she can give them answers, but they will have to pay a price. At that moment, they see spiders approaching them, as Akira explains that they were created by Autumn, saying they're in its territory. She knows that Andy and Izumo are about to fight Autumn, and she gives them a hint, saying they will become stronger once they get to know each other better. She uses her artifact to create a trap, cutting the spiders in half, and she gets covered with their blood. But she says it's okay, because Izumo's manga is still safe, and she starts talking about it, but Andy and Izumo realize that she's a weirdo. She says she wants to help them get stronger, but Andy threatens her, asking her if she knows the future. But she suddenly disappears, and she returns Izumo's manga, saying she had fun reading it. Andy wonders what kind of ability she has, and Izumo asks her about Autumn, but they hear a man screaming, so Izumo rushes to save him. But Akira tells her to stop, saying she doesn't stand a chance against Autumn because she still hasn't mastered her power. But she's determined to save his life, because she knows that UMAs can transform humans, as she recalls the zombie teacher during their battle with Spoil. Andy follows her, as Akira tells her that she has a good heart, saying she will need it to make progress. But as they reach Autumn, she warns them that it's too strong for them, and Izumo sees the man, but Autumn kills him, turning him into a book. It reads about his life, thinking he's too boring, so it eats him, as it reveals that it's searching for an interesting story. It sees them, and it launches its spiders, so Andy springs into action, saying he will rely on Izumo's ability to defeat Autumn. He slices through the spiders, and he concentrates his power on his finger, launching it with everything he has, but it doesn't do anything. Autumn hits him, transforming his leg into books, and Akira watches them, knowing they're at a disadvantage, so she slices off her arm, and uses her artifact to create a copy of Andy's arm, using it to replace the one she lost. She uses it to launch a finger with tremendous force, and it hits Autumn, creating an opening, as she uses her artifact to create a plane. She flies to Andy and Izumo, telling them to get in, and she manages to rescue them before Autumn recovers. As they fly away, we see that Rip has arrived on the scene, and Izumo wraps Akira in bandages, as Andy wonders if her arm is going to grow back. But she reveals that it won't, saying she can only materialize one drawing at a time. Izumo wonders why she's doing this, so she reveals that she wants to win their trust, telling them not to worry, because she doesn't need her left hand to draw. Akira welcomes them to her house, telling them it's time to begin their training, and she knows that they need to report to Jules. So she creates an emblem, which she uses to call Jules, asking for her permission to train them. But she refuses, saying she doesn't trust Akira, and asking her what's going to happen in the future. So she explains that it won't end well, because Andy and Izumo are no match for Autumn, saying there won't be a future if she doesn't train them. Izumo tells Jules that she trusts Akira, because she risked her life to save them, and Andy thinks she can help them become stronger, because she knows about his past. He knows that Victor is far stronger than him, thinking it's because he lacks knowledge, so he's willing to train with Akira, and Jules grants them permission, under the condition that he returns safely. So Akira draws Autumn's claw, reminding them that it turns people into books, and she explains that it can help them learn about their past. Andy tells her to hit him, so she attacks him, causing countless books to appear, and Izumo is surprised, as it breaks through the ceiling, and extends to the sky, creating an enormous book. Akira explains that it contains Victor's memories, and Izumo wonders how she's supposed to read it, so Akira tells her she's going to enter. Izumo asks her what she means, but she uses an artifact, separating Izumo's soul from her body. She's surprised to see this, but Akira tells her not to panic, explaining that her artifact will allow Izumo to enter the book. She takes Izumo's soul, and she forces it into the book, telling Izumo that she's about to learn about Andy's past. Izumo finds herself in the middle of the desert, realizing that she's inside Andy's memories, but she hears a gunshot, and a man asks her if she's one of the kids that got away. She tries to introduce herself, but he can't understand Japanese, telling her to speak in English, so she realizes that Nico's necktie isn't working. She tries to speak in English, but the man doesn't understand her, and he tries to kill her, but Andy protects her, and he shoots the man, killing him in an instant. Andy calls out to his companions, asking them if she's one of the kids, but his friend Josh tells him that the kids don't know her. Izumo calls out to him, and he realizes that she's speaking in Japanese, asking her who she is. Josh grabs her, telling her to stay away from him, but he tells Josh to stop, so she releases Izumo, who realizes that Josh touched her hair, warning her that she's going to experience bad luck. She asks Izumo what she means, and she gets hit by bird poop, so Izumo feels relieved, because it could have been so much worse. Josh threatens to kill her, thinking she must be a witch, so she realizes that she needs to earn their trust. She tells them about Andy's tattoos, causing them to become surprised, and she explains that she knows what's going to happen in the future. But Josh doesn't believe her, asking her how she knows Andy, but he decides to trust her, and they return to the town, where the kids are reunited with their parents. A woman thanks them for saving the kids, and she invites them to eat in her restaurant. So that evening, she gives them food, but she wonders why they aren't drinking, saying they can have beer for free. So they decide to have a drinking contest, and Andy's companions end up getting drunk, but Josh manages to stay sober. Moments later, Izumo asks them what they normally do, so Andy explains that they hunt criminals, saying troublemakers appeared after the Civil War ended. Josh explains that Andy doesn't remember his past, saying he's been trying to learn more about it, and she reveals that they joined his group because he saved them from trouble. They threaten to kill Izumo if they find out she's lying, but Andy tells them to stop, asking her how she found out about his tattoos. So she tells him that he's always naked in the future, but no one believes her, thinking he would never do that. She explains that his values must have changed, saying he's been alive for countless years, and she tells them that he uses a sword in the future, but everyone laughs at her, thinking Andy isn't immortal. So she realizes that Andy isn't aware of his powers, asking him if she can join them, because she wants to earn his trust and learn more about him. So he prepares a revolver, saying it has one bullet, and he tells her to shoot her head, saying she can join his crew if she survives. She follows his instructions, pulling the trigger, but she manages to survive, and they're about to welcome her into the group. But she keeps pulling the trigger, so Josh stops her, thinking she's crazy, but she knows that the gun isn't loaded, knowing Andy wouldn't put her life at risk. Josh takes a liking to her, saying she should join them, but at that moment, they get ambushed by a group of men. We learn that they're working with the woman, saying she did a good job by getting Andy's crew drunk, and they promise to stop messing with the kids. They leave the restaurant, and we see that Andy's crew has been wiped out, but Izumo manages to survive, because Josh protected her. Josh asks her about Andy's future, so she tells Josh that he's doing well, and she's happy to hear this, as she draws her last breath. Andy regains consciousness, and he takes his friend's weapons, using it to slaughter the group of men. He realizes that he's immortal, so he believes Izumo's story, saying using a sword makes sense, because he can't die anyway, and she cries, realizing that he lost countless friends during his lifetime. They bury Andy's friends, and the woman apologizes for her actions, saying she wants to atone for her sins, so Andy tells her to honor his friends by pouring drinks for them every year. They leave the town, as Izumo tells Andy that he's a good person, because he gave the woman a chance to atone for her sins, but he denies this, saying he wants her to suffer. Izumo starts traveling with Andy, and she notes that the experience feels like a dream, but she wonders why he never smiles, realizing that he never talks about his past. They recruit new members into the group, and Izumo tells them about her ability, but they don't believe her, so she touches them, causing them to experience bad luck. She makes her way to Andy, giving him food, and he asks her about her concept of death, thinking a person dies when the brain stops working. But she disagrees, saying a man only dies when people stop remembering him, and she explains that she accidentally killed her parents, but she thinks they're still alive, because they continue to live in her memories. She tells Andy that his friends aren't dead, because he still remembers them, and she realizes that he's smiling, so she becomes happy, thinking her hard work paid off. He reveals that his oldest memory dates back to 1865, asking her if she will go there, and he explains that he's feeling better, because his friends are still alive in his memories. He tries to kiss her, but she stops him, saying she loves him, but she isn't ready to kiss him yet. Andy tells her that she's starting to fade away, and she's about to leave him, but she tells him they're going to meet in the future, saying she'll kiss him when that time comes. We cut to Jules, as she asks Victor if he believes in reincarnation, but he explains that he doesn't, thinking souls don't exist. But she tells him that she believes in it, because she wants to keep seeing him after she dies, saying she will always remember him no matter how many times she's reincarnated. But we see her placing the seal on Victor, and we return to Izumo, as she realizes that she's in the year 1865. Victor appears, telling her to get lost, because he doesn't want her to see his memories, but she refuses, saying she wants to see why Andy was born. But Victor threatens to kill her, saying she will jump to the next chapter after she dies, and he will keep hunting her down, revealing that her soul will disappear if she dies in the last chapter. She wonders why he wants to kill her, so he explains that Andy will weaken after he's done with her, saying he plans to return to the real world. She accepts her fate, and he kills her, causing her to jump to the next chapter, but he keeps taking her down until she reaches the moment that she first met Andy. Victor approaches her, so she starts running away, realizing that this is her only chance. She starts looking for Andy, but Victor uses his blood to create massive claws, which he uses to slice through everything, causing widespread destruction in the city. He thinks Izumo is dead, but there's suddenly an explosion as Andy arrives, launching his arm at Victor, who looks down on him, thinking he's weak. Victor tries to block his attack, but it pierces through his body, cutting him into pieces. Izumo is overjoyed to see Andy, and she starts clinging to him, as he tells her to hold on, because her ability will activate the moment she lets go of him. Victor recovers, and Andy asks him why he's trying to kill Izumo, so he explains that she was trying to look into his memory, thinking killing her will help him return to the real world. But Andy reveals that she changed his life, so he's determined to protect her at all costs. Victor launches an attack, but Andy manages to dodge all of them, as Victor notes that his abilities have improved. He manages to close the distance, and they start fighting with their blades, as Victor realizes that he has learned to solidify his blood. They exchange blows, as Victor realizes that meeting Izumo has made him stronger, but he notes that Andy lacks proficiency, and he destroys Andy's blade, so he tries to retreat. But Victor cuts his legs, causing him to crash to the ground. Victor creates an energy beam with his blood, and Andy tries to do the same, but he's about to get overwhelmed, as Victor tells him he isn't strong enough. But he tells Izumo to let go, saying he has a plan, so she kisses him, and she starts running away, as he realizes that a massive stroke of bad luck is approaching. He launches his fingers, and Victor manages to overpower him, wondering what he's thinking. But a finger touches Victor, and he gets hit by an explosion, as Andy reveals that he loaded his soul into his fingers, allowing them to carry bad luck. Another finger hits Victor, causing a train to ram into him, but Andy also gets hit, and we see that their bodies have been destroyed. Andy reveals that he used to repair himself from the head, because he thought he needed his brain to survive. But his head disappears, and he repairs himself from his torso, causing Victor to become surprised. He twists his arm, and he launches it with incredible strength, blowing Victor away, as he explains that Izumo changed the way he sees the world. So he now believes in the existence of a soul, and this allowed him to get stronger. Andy's arm breaks through Victor's defenses, and another finger hits him, causing a plane to crash into him, and it slams him into the ground. The last finger hits Victor, but Izumo thinks it's useless, knowing he can't be killed. But they see the capsule that was used to store Andy, and it's about to catch Victor, who realizes that they have made progress, so he allows himself to get captured. Izumo wants to talk to Victor, thinking he could tell her more about Andy's past, so he tells Victor to come out, knowing he's strong enough to destroy the capsule. So he breaks out of it, and she asks him about his relationship with Jules, saying she knows they created the Union, so she wonders why he's trying to ruin their plans. He reveals that things went well in the beginning, because they were able to clear the quests together, but when he learned that they were fighting against God, he realized that they never stood a chance. So he decided to give up, thinking it's pointless to resist, but Jules refused to surrender, so she boarded the Ark to keep trying. He thinks she's being foolish, so he wants to put her out of her misery, because he doesn't want to see her suffer, saying he loves her. But he explains that he has changed his mind, because he realized that Izumo's ability could be the key to defeating God, reminding her that she summoned a tool made to capture him. He thinks that her ability becomes stronger the more she knows the target, so he advises her to learn more about God so that she will be able to defeat him. Victor starts walking away, and Izumo asks him what happened in the year 1865, but he tells her it doesn't matter, saying she can ask Jules if she wants to find out. She wonders how she can return to the real world, so Victor tells her to kiss Andy, and he suddenly kisses her, causing her to cry as she starts fading away, but he tells her to stop crying, saying he looks forward to seeing her in the real world. Izumo returns to Akira, who explains that Andy is experiencing another life because Izumo has altered his memories. But this won't change his actual life, and Akira thinks Izumo was able to make him stronger. At that moment, Rip's group arrives, and Akira threatens to kill them, so Rip attacks her, but she manages to defend herself. He asks her about the future, but she refuses to say anything, and we learn that Unseen is working with Rip, saying he will get promoted after he eliminates Izumo. Rip launches his blade, and Akira tries to block it, but the blade overpowers her, and she ends up losing her other arm. In a flashback, we learn that Akira is actually a boy, and he was raised by a single mother who was interested in his stories, realizing that he's extremely creative. One day, he stumbles upon a pen, and he picks it up, but it turns out to be an artifact known as the G-Liner, and he receives visions about the past and future events. He wonders what he just saw, thinking it would make a great story, so he wants to tell his mother about it. But he runs into a man, so he apologizes for being careless, but the man ignores him, and he realizes that something's wrong. He returns home, drawing pictures about the characters in his vision, and as his mother returns home, he tries to greet her, but he realizes that she can't see him. She walks past him as she starts looking for him, and we learn that he has awakened his ability, which prevents other people from knowing about him. His mother calls the authorities, telling them she can't find Akira, and she begs them to look for him. So he desperately tries to grab her attention, but his ability prevents him from interacting with her, so she becomes depressed, hoping he's still alive, and pursuing his passion by drawing manga. He leaves his house, thinking his ability won't disappear until he dies, so he decides to draw a manga, which is inspired by the visions he saw. We learn that Andy and Izumo are his favorite characters because they kept fighting despite their personal struggles, so he decides to follow their example. He continues working for countless days, and he finishes the manga, thinking nobody's going to read it, and he uses Unknown as his pen name. But after some time, everyone learns about the manga, and it ends up becoming a massive success, as he realizes that he can still interact with people as long as they don't learn about him. He continues working on his manga, as he wonders if Andy and Izumo are real, and he sees the date, knowing Andy is currently practicing how to use a sword. So Akira decides to look for Andy, wanting to confirm if he's real, and Akira sees Andy training with his master, so he becomes overjoyed, trying to touch Andy, but he just runs past him. Andy bids his master farewell, but she doesn't want to let him go, thinking he's incredibly talented, and she wants him to stay with her. But he reminds her that he's immortal, saying they can't be together because she can't outlive him, so he decides to leave. Seeing this, Akira realizes that negators are suffering because of their abilities, but they're still fighting to defeat God. However, he knows that it won't end well for them, because they're going to lose Andy and Izumo in the fight against Autumn, so they won't have a chance against God. So he decides to change the future, creating a manga which covers the events before Izumo's death, and using his artifact to create a female avatar. We return to the present, as Akira realizes that Izumo is about to meet her end, because Unseen is about to take her out. But Andy appears, and Akira tells him to use his new skill, so he creates a blade, using it to cut everything around him. Unseen gets sliced into pieces, and we learn that he's the one who killed Izumo in Akira's vision, so she knows that she has changed the future. Andy recognizes Unseen, knowing he was trying to kill Izumo, so Andy knows she would have died if Akira didn't intervene. Rip tells his companion Bunny to deal with Izumo, so she charges in, trying to take Izumo's artifact. So Izumo uses her ability to defend herself, knocking Bunny back, but she reveals that she was able to steal the artifact, absorbing it into her body. But Izumo's ability takes effect, causing her to fall, and Rip gets in the way, thinking he will have to deal with them on his own. She asks him why he doesn't want to help them catch Autumn, reminding him that they're all negators, and they should work together to defeat God. But Rip explains that his group isn't interested in defeating God, saying Billy is the only one who wants to do it, and they're just helping him because their interests are aligned. Rip is interested in the Ark, asking Izumo if she knows anything about it, but Akira tells him to give up, saying he won't be able to ride it, and Mira is going to end up dying. He isn't happy to hear this, saying he's willing to risk everything to achieve his goal, and he sees Mira following Autumn, revealing that she also wants to protect someone important. She reveals that Autumn is approaching them, asking Rip if he has a plan, and he decides to work with Andy and Izumo, preparing to gang up on Autumn. Izumo realizes that it's bigger than before, and Andy thinks it must have evolved, because it's been consuming people while they were away. So she becomes worried, thinking he won't be able to defeat it, because he struggled against it during their first encounter. But he explains that it's all in the past, and he slashes it with his new skill. Izumo realizes that it worked, thinking they can defeat it, but it suddenly regenerates, and Rip tries to help, but his attack doesn't work. Autumn launches countless projectiles, and Mira protects Rip, saying his attacks are useless, but he explains it's because he's a kid. Akira thinks about what they have achieved so far, thinking they need Rip's help to defeat Autumn. So she tells them to buy time for her, because she's going to draw the strongest artifact, but Rip and Mira don't trust her. We learn that Akira accidentally discovered the G-Liner's ability when he drew his avatar, and he used her to look for his mother, but he realized that she's already dead. He knows that Rip changed after he lost his fiancée, blaming himself for her death, because he performed a surgery on her, but she couldn't recover because he awakened his ability. But Akira knows that he's still a good person, so he uses his avatar to draw the artifact, ordering it to age Rip by 15 years, and this activates its power. Rip suddenly grows up, and he recognizes the artifact, because Fang used it to heal him. But he becomes upset, asking Akira what she's thinking, because it causes the user to age rapidly. He tells her to return the artifact, saying he can still save her life, but it disappears, and she tells him not to worry about her, because she's just going back to being alone. She explains that Andy and Izumo need his help to capture Autumn, saying she's glad she was able to talk to him, and she suddenly disappears. Izumo recalls that everyone despised her as a child, because they blamed her for their misfortune, thinking her power is causing them to suffer, but her grandfather tells her that she didn't do anything wrong. She sees Akira's manga, and he tells her that it's her mother's favorite, so he offers it to her altar whenever a new volume is released. Izumo starts reading it, and she immediately takes a liking to it, reading it until she grows up, as she notes that life has been hard on her, but the book prevented her from taking her own life, because she wants to see the ending. But we see that Akira's pen has been destroyed, so he can no longer work on the manga, and Andy continues his fight against Autumn, but it keeps regenerating, so he wonders how they can defeat it. Rip asks him about Akira, wondering why she helped him, as he mentions that he refuses to become their friend, but Izumo explains that Akira helped them because she wants them to defeat Autumn. Bunny wonders why Rip isn't happy, so Mira reveals that he wants to be a villain, thinking he won't be able to save his fiancée if he becomes a hero. Andy thinks they should all work together, and he orders everyone around, but Rip becomes upset, wondering why he's issuing orders, because they aren't teammates, but he explains that they need to win no matter what. At that moment, Autumn's spiders appear, and they're absorbed into its body, causing it to transform. It takes an interest in Andy, using a skill to restrain him, and it's about to take him out. But Rip remembers his fiancée, who used to call him a hero, and he springs into action, destroying Autumn's arm. He agrees to help them, and Autumn tries to stop them, launching countless projectiles, and causing a massive explosion, but it completely misses. Izumo kisses Andy, and she joins Mira, as Andy and Rip charge at Autumn, using their skills to attack it, and creating an opening on its chest. Its core has been exposed, but it launches countless projectiles, as it tries to protect itself. But Andy concentrates all of his energy into his finger, and it's able to break through Autumn's defenses. Izumo's skill activates, causing a meteor to appear, and it crashes into Autumn, destroying its body, as Mira takes its core. Andy falls to the ground, and he thinks about Akira, saying they have won, and Akira is overjoyed to see him, realizing that his sacrifice isn't in vain. Autumn's body disappears, and Rip orders Mira to collect the soul artifact, as Izumo thanks Rip for helping them, saying they should continue working together. But he reminds her that he wants the Ark, saying he doesn't trust Jules, because she wants to keep it to herself. so he plans to steal it from her, and Izumo realizes that he's willing to do anything for his fiancée. Bunny returns Izumo's artifact, and Rip decides to let them have Autumn, saying he owes them for returning him to his adult body. Mira gives Izumo what's left of the G-liner, and Rip asks Andy about Akira, so he explains that he doesn't know, but he correctly guesses Akira's ability. They bid each other farewell, but Izumo suddenly becomes exhausted, and Andy knows that it's because she explored his memories, saying she did well to stick with him. But she explains that it's nothing, saying she only spent 10 years in the book, and she's willing to spend her entire lifetime with him. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.